Thaddeus Cray Productions presents the Pricolici, a story of a man named Abel was brought low through treachery, and due to this, his anger at the world made him act as an animal, and then it truly became one, truly a cross between animal and man, and then, on the day in which he met a monster even worse than himself, he was changed into a creature beyond both vampire and werewolf, a fiend of true terror and power. And yet this one moment in which he defied his maker, would he truly become the man in whom he had been before? I present to you a Werewolf Hunter side story, the Pricolici, and also how the Council of Ten came to be. I hope you enjoy. The air is freezing cold. Most human beings would not be able to handle it. Hypothermia would have gotten them within a matter of moments. However, to one such as Charles Legrand Sanchez, also known as BlackFeather, it means very little. After all, this had been part of the trials, and which would allow him to ascend to that of a werewolf, and later to become part of the Council of Ten. Charles has always been an emissary for the Council. However, tonight, he has been called by the first, the founder of the Council. The timing could not have been more interesting, to say the least. He recently, not even a month ago, had attended the funeral procession of his own maker, the one in whom had infected him with lycanthropy when he was a young man. The man known as Alphonse had finally met his end. He had not died on the battlefield as he wished he could have. He had died in bed, ironically surrounded by loved ones and family. Charles, in the end, despite the fact the old warrior would have wanted to die and go to Valhalla in his own way, Charles would have to say his maker had died a good, noble death. And make no mistake, the halls of the afterlife would definitely be welcoming to the man. He pushes his thoughts away as he walks through the snow. He is in the Carpathian Mountains, a place that has been ravaged by war and death. To an elder alpha like BlackFeather, even though he is not native to this land, he cannot help but feel the spirits watching him, their presence. Up ahead in the distance, he sees a very large estate. The house, or closer to a mansion or a manor, is old. Charles narrows his eyes. Indeed, he has found the place in which he has sought. He has sought the home of the founder of the Council of Ten, a man who is as much werewolf as he is a human being. He opens the door. He finds to his surprise that the entire interior is very well lit, but not with anything of the modern age, no. There are different gas lanterns that flicker in the darkness, as well as no small amount of candles. He cannot see the object of who he seeks, the individual who is known as Abel, the oldest known werewolf to truly live. But then, of course, in the end, he is not truly a pure werewolf. He is something else. Something that back in the old days would have been considered an abomination, and they would have sought his life. However, when this man had changed into the creature that he is now, a being beyond vampire and werewolf, well, let's leave it at this. His ingenuity, as well as his survival skills, had saved both species. Finally, Charles is able to get a bead on the man. He walks down the stairs. Very calm, very relaxed. He is a slight man, slightly shorter than that of Charles' thin, strong form. Yet the man is slightly more heavily built, despite being so compact an individual. He is pale, insanely so, his skin seeming almost luminescent in the candlelight. Charles, however, is not alarmed. In fact, he is somewhat glad to see the man. It's been some time, Abel. Indeed it has, my friend. Indeed it has. Welcome. Is there anything that you would like? Not really. I was able to bring a few supplies with me through these damn mountains you live in. And I was able to hunt not even a few hours ago. What did you bring down, if I may ask? There's a couple of deer, nothing special. Fair enough. So you have at least been able to eat your fill. This is a good thing. So, tell me, why have you come? Charles was quiet for a few moments. He knows that to say the wrong thing would offend the man. However, it would not put him in danger. He's not worried of that, despite the immense power that the man known as Abel Solinsky does possess. They are old friends, comrades. As a matter of fact, Charles has come simply on a personal affair. He decides to voice his statements very carefully and respectfully. So he directs the statement back to Abel. Well, last time I checked, it was you that contacted me. This is true, for a couple of reasons. And what would that be? Well, first off, pick a seat. You standing there looking like some intruder in the middle of the night makes no sense. Take off your coat. Make yourself comfortable. Of course, sorry. I've just been dealing with a lot. I'm aware. The man takes his coat off and sets the parka aside on a hook. He makes himself comfortable by the fireplace. The compact man known as Abel sits across from him, steepling his fingers as he sets his elbows on the arms of his chair. He looks through his steepled fingers and speaks. Yes, I've wanted to talk with you, mainly to see how you have always been a good friend of mine. And of course, the council has voiced a few concerns to me, but in the end, I grow tired of their petty squabbling. Now, you are the one that founded them. Indeed, but I also made it to where they should be able to survive on their own, without my constant supervision. I grow tired of being a father hen. I think you understand this. Indeed I do. Well, when you had decided to call out to the council for the usual annual welfare check, if you want to call it that, I decided to be the one to come see you. It's been a while and I've missed you, for one. But also, I was curious about a few things, and I honestly need your advice. I shall try to strive as best I can to give you the insight in which you seek, young Sanchez, but I cannot promise that it will be satisfactory. He was the only one who ever called BlackFeather by his last name now. It was a very close form of endearment between the two. Fair enough. The fact is, Abel, I'm kind of curious. One, how you really became the founder of our group, and how you've been able to... The squabbling, the petty fighting, it gets old. I have heard, Romanchek especially, he has grown ambitious, and there has been talk of possibly having to remove him. Unfortunately, when it came to removal from the council, there was only one way, if you were part of the Council of Ten. And that was either through, of course, expiring of old age, or being slain. Abel immediately guessed how that removal was going to take place. Most likely the other 9 members, including, of course, BlackFeather, would set upon the man and tear him to shreds. However, possibly there might be another way. And Abel understood this, and this is why BlackFeather had come to ask for his insight. What exactly is the problem? Well, for one, he's been cavorting with an old friend of mine. The problem is he's also possibly been dealing in things that are very unsavory. What sort of things? We're not sure. Who is the other one, and whom has been associating with Romanchek? His name is Garrett. Garrett's an old friend of mine. Unfortunately, His pack resides in Alaska. All of them are good people, all of them. He, at first, I thought was a good man as well. Unfortunately, these last few years have made me question that. About 15 years ago, he was removed as alpha because of a few bad choices he made, which got a few of us killed. As that in itself proves he is a foolish one. Why is he allowed to live? Well, unfortunately, it's not exactly so cut and dry. You can't exactly just go around just killing someone because they make a few errors. It's not so simple like it was in your day. My boy, it was never simple. That is the first thing you must understand, the man said, his amber eyes glinting in the darkness. But I shall tell you, the best way in which I shall be able to. What sort of things has this Gerrit dealt with? What are the things that are so illicit, in which he is talking with Romanchek over? Well, for one, we believe that he is, making very illicit deals with the vampires. Which vampires are you speaking of? Not the ones in which we have alliances with. Damn it. You speak of Malachi, do you not? The one and only, he says grimly. That in itself is very bad, and of course if it is found to be true, then he must be dealt with immediately. He then very calmly unsteeples his hands and sets them on the arms of his chair, tapping a long-nailed finger against the fabric as if deep in thought. What are the other things in which you believe he is guilty of? Let me hear these things, and then I shall tell you my response. Well, it's bad enough he's been possibly dealing with affairs involving Malachi. You know as well as I do, a lot of the things in which that bastard deals in are, of course, human trafficking, drugs, and only the Great Spirit himself knows. However, there's one thing in which I'm not sure, but I do have my suspicions, and this is, of course, just a hunch. Out with it, then. I believe he's smuggling cryptids. Abel's eyes glow red for a moment. And that in itself sends chills down Charles's back. Normally I would say, destroy him immediately. But you are aware, such accusations, if proven unfounded, could possibly involve yourself being removed from the council. And this I would rather not see. I'm aware of that. So how do you think I should handle this? Abel stands and looks to his friend. Abel's features are hawkish. The man himself appears nothing truly spectacular. He simply appears as a man who has seen too much and suffered an eternity. I will have to tell you many things. Are you prepared to listen to me? Of course. First off, I sense that when you came in the door, you had questions for me, and it was beyond the normal seeking advice in which so many of our kind have come, seeking from me. You seek to know truly how I would handle this situation. You desire to know truly what I know. I shall tell you. But first, you must be prepared for this story. It will be very in-depth, and I will need your full attention. Of course, I'm glad to hear this. Once Abel is sure that he has Charles BlackFeather's undivided attention, he begins his story. We now begin the story. The man known as Abel Solinsky had been born in a very small village in the Carpathian Mountains. He had studied to become a man of order and law, pretty much an enforcer in the village. The Baron, in which ruled this area, for the most part was a just and decent man. However, as Abel grew into adulthood, he definitely achieved his dream. He wound up being a personal enforcer for this Baron. And things worked fairly well. He himself was able to actually marry and have children. And overall, the affair in itself was quite a pleasant experience for him. He was able to handle the affairs of the people justly, and he definitely had to, at times, be ruthless and put people to the sword. However, despite this, he always prayed to the Lord, "May I be just and may I be compassionate in the things that I do." Unfortunately, I cannot tell you whether the Lord heard his prayer or refused to do so. Yet in the end, this was not to be. When the Baron died, his son, a very rotten, vicious, entitled bastard of a man, decided that he needed his own sycophants, in whom he could trust implicitly to take the place of those who were in his father's court, including the soldiers and the generals. Abel's family was put to the sword, his own wife accused of witchcraft, and burned at the stake. His daughter, as well as his son, were cut down under mysterious circumstances, and Abel himself became a man on the run. He swore to avenge himself upon those who had slain his family and those he held so dear, and dishonored his own name through the lies in which had sullied his reputation. In the end, he gave in to the monster within, a man filled with rage and hatred. He joined a band of cutthroats and vicious, vicious bandits, raiders. These individuals would raid, rape, pillage, murder the townsfolk every chance they got. These were not a merry band of thieves. These were vicious murderers, monsters, which wore the skins of men. One of these men, the man who led the band, seemed to have a gift. He seemed to be able to take the most damage in combat, as well as always elude those in which sought this band of cutthroats, in which Abel had joined. His senses seemed uncanny, his strength, his ability to heal from any injury. It was inhuman. So one day, Abel approached this man, whom to this day his name has been forgotten to the sands of time. The man, the leader, looked to Abel and told him that he had been granted a gift by the gods when he was young, and in this he was able to change from man into beast, and that he had always had these senses ever since. He had killed his own maker, and himself was hunted by the pack of the one in which it had infected him, but he had always, due to his viciousness and cunning, stayed one step ahead. Due to his own bestial nature as a man and his cruelty, he had surprisingly been able to manage control of the beast without the mark on the palm. It had simply been done through willpower. However, he had been taught many of the old rites, as well as the ways of the wolf, before he had slain the alpha in which had brought him across. The leader told Abel, "I see promise in you. I'll tell you what. I will give you what I have, but you must swear undying fealty to me." Abel, of course, did not deny this. In fact, he embraced his new fate. And sure enough, he drank the blood offered to him of the leader, which of course was a faster infection than just the bite. Within a matter of weeks, he himself was a werewolf. These two men led the raiders through an orgy of bloodshed and more death. Unfortunately for them, the Inquisition during this period of time had begun. This had been the result of the first vampire, Malachi's cruelty to human beings, as well as his desire to spread his rule over so many. Mankind, especially those in the church, had rebelled, and unfortunately, those in which were vampires were being discovered, and they themselves being put to the sword as well as the stake. Many of the werewolves in which Malachi had had dealings with were also discovered, and thus the true purge began, the stuff of nightmares, and it was during this period of time that two species, originally enemies, were now joined together in persecution. The hangings, the burnings of so many people, most, of course, who were not undead or of the lycanthrope strain. In the end, it didn't matter. So many died. So many were killed by the Inquisition's wrath, as well as their insane hypocrisy. 2/3 of both species, werewolf and vampire, were destroyed. Had it not been for Brius's, the first vampire's, intervention, his children Mirrodin, as well as that of Nikolai, would have suffered the same fate as many of their own children. Malachi had to be stopped, and Brius himself, in a very vicious battle, in a location, in a river which only the vampire elders know of, had slammed a stake through his son's heart. He had not been able to bring himself to kill the youngest pureblood. Yet in the end, Malachi's reign of terror, at least for this moment, had stopped. Many of his own children fled, as well as those and who had been caught in the maelstrom of the Inquisition's persecution. The few werewolf elders in which survived knew that they could not do things the way they had before. Many things were outlawed, including the infection of any child below 13 years of age. This was simply the law. They could not afford to have any such abnormalities in their ranks which could bring them attention. So thus, the Council of 10 was created. The 10 strongest packs in which it survived. Each one had an elder. These elders, whether they be male or female, the strongest in their packs, were appointed. And in the end, for their own survival, these 10 individuals' word was law that would never be questioned again, because in the end, if they did so, they could risk their species' extinction, and this could not be allowed. The vampires, in which it survived the persecution of the Inquisition, also made strong alliances with the vampires, the first pureblood vampires, Mirrodin, of course, and Nikolai, and their children. The children of Malachi, of course, definitely still maintained their ability, and make no mistake, their deeds of pure evil will be written in legend all the way to the present time. During this period of time, Abel himself had lost the support of the leader when it came to this band of raiders. Abel himself had grown a truly cold and evil heart. He had made deals with Malachi, as well as those who served him, and what he would do is betray his leader's trust. And in this, he shoved a silver blade into the back of the one in whom it infected him and taught him everything he knew. In doing this, he would leave his leader's corpse for the crows to devour, and the wolves, ironic, isn't it, to consume. In this, he made his mark as a very cruel and evil man, a man who was definitely not anywhere near the kind and justifiable soul of his human life. It was during this period of time that he procured a shipment of children, orphans, urchins, different individuals of children, and who would not be missed. These children were packed up in crates and cages, and the raiders, under Abel's command, would give these children to different factions of vampires who operated under Malachi's hunger. The men in whom were under Abel at this point in time were so disgusted that they had to do something. This was one thing they could not abide by. They were rapists and murderers, but this was beyond even what they could fathom. So they were able to betray their leader, Abel. And they set a trap for him. In this trap, they cornered him and trapped him in a pit, a very heavy, deep pit in which he could not escape. The bars were impenetrable, even for his bestial strength. And in this, they lit the pit alight, setting him on fire and leaving him for dead. The fire should have finished him, as it would have with almost any living creature, werewolf or otherwise. Yet for some reason his spirit fought on. He refused to give in and let these bastards who betrayed him get away with what they had done. Just like the Baron's son. Just like those bastards who had killed his wife and his children. He would get his revenge. This he swore. Late that night, near his time of death, he looked out of the bars of the pit in which he had been trapped in and lit a light. His vision was fading, but he could see a man, a massive individual, of broad shoulder and very savage appearance. This was the third son of Pricolici, Malachi. The vampire had simply asked him one question: "Do you desire to live?" Abel, of course, had said, "Of course, I have no desire to die like this. Are you mad? Of course, I will do whatever it takes. I want to get back at those bastards who did this to me." And he himself could not deny the evil he had done, but at this moment in time, his own anger and desire for revenge clouded his thinking. And Malachi had given him what he sought. With effortless movement, he was able, just with one hand, to reach into the bars of the pit which trapped Abel. With a very casual gesture, he ripped the bindings off from the pit and yanked Abel up by the throat. And with this, he looked the dying werewolf in the eyes and told him, "You will only serve me. This shall be my command to you. Your own desires no longer matter." But Abel looked the man defiantly in the eye and said, "But you promised." "You were a fool, boy. For indeed I shall keep my promise to you. You will get your chance for revenge. But first, you must prove to me, are you worthy of getting that revenge? You shall serve me, and only me, and then, perhaps, I shall give you the privilege of setting straight the wrongs in which have happened to you in this life. I must admit, the children in which you delivered to me were quite tasty. I wonder how you shall taste. You need not worry of the lycanthropy. My power shall wipe that from you and make you whole and one of mine," he said. And with this, he bit down, those elongated fangs ripping out the throat of Abel's neck as he drank deeply and slowly, relishing the agony and pain of Abel's final moments as a living man. And with this, he with a very long clawed hand, sliced his wrist and forced Abel to drink deeply. The change rapidly occurring as his body began to eliminate the wastes of his mortal life. However, there was something that happened in which even Malachi could not really fathom or understand. Abel was able to wrench free of the vampire's grasp as an unholy hunger and rage filled his body. And with this, his body began to contort like it always had in the past when he willed a change. His appearance morphed within a matter of seconds to that of a huge bipedal wolf, a massive beast, yet there were subtle differences. His ears were no longer lupine, that were closer to that of a bat. A knob of flesh, which was very similar to that of a vampire bat's, adorned his muzzle. As he then rubbed in Malachi's face, the two battled and fought viciously. Yet the vampire, Malachi, and his arrogance, who he thought would be able to actually purge lycanthropy from a man and make him a very powerful and willing slave, met defeat that night. He was driven away, having narrowly avoided the final death. And thus, the first and only hybrid being of vampire and werewolf was born, the Pricolici. Many a vampire, and even a werewolf at times, would try this experiment and fail, because only the power of a pure-blood vampire, one of the first three under Brius, would be able to pull this off when it came to a werewolf. Handling his new desire and need for blood proved even more of a challenge than all of the things he had learned when it came to the ways of the wolf under the leader's teachings. Yet Abel was a man of very strong mentality as well as will. In this, as well as many very near fatal mistakes, he was able to actually master both the vampire as well as that of the lycanthrope within him. He began to learn quickly. Silver would affect him. It could actually kill him more so than any other thing. Reason for this, even to this day, he does not know. However, despite this, he found that he could actually handle the sunlight, unlike other vampires. This in itself would prove quite useful to the man. And as the Inquisition and the Purge continued, wiping out the ranks of both werewolf and vampire, Abel bided his time, and by this time he had learned to control his powers, both vampiric as well as that of the wolf, which he had always known before. So therefore, in this, while originally he had had to hide away from both species and their desire to end his life, or unlife in this case, he had used his wisdom, as well as the fact of his guilty conscience. His battle with Malachi had truly opened up his eyes. While he had gone feral during that period of time, it had actually brought a very rare point in his fairly long life by now, and that was humanity. He felt true guilt of the evil in which he had done, the rapes, the murders, giving children to blood-sucking fiends as currency. He swore that he would do better, and this is what he was able to do, truly. As I said, he bided his time, and he was able to gather many together, most importantly, the surviving werewolf packs and tribes. He told them, "I understand that I am not as you are, but if you dare challenge me, I will destroy every last one of you." And the fact is, as powerful as he was, it's possible that he could have. So through the power of might makes right, he was able to gather them to him. And in this, his meeting with the alphas of these few remaining tribes actually worked out. They were all able to actually work together under his command. And in this, they established the first Council of 10, a cabal of leaders, and which would never be questioned by those of the werewolf species. Their word was law, and different tenets were put out, and in these laws were assured the survival of the werewolf. Strong alliances were made with Mirrodin and Nikolai Triculos through Abel's help in bringing Malachi down. In this, certain oaths of fealty were sworn, and because of the power in which Abel had, they did not gather together to destroy him. As a matter of fact, they admired his courage, and despite being both werewolf and vampire, they did not consider him an abomination like they would have in the past. Such times were over with. It was now more important that both species survived, and this is how the council came to be. With Abel always being in the shadows, always giving advice, and at times commands to those in which he had helped save so long ago. Abel grows silent once the story is told. His hawkish features show little emotion, yet his eyes seem to pierce the soul when he looks through that of BlackFeather. It is obvious he is curious of the younger man's reaction. The old alpha sighs lightly and responds. It gives me a little bit of insight, I have to give it that. But of course, that was the intention. Now, do you understand what you must do if you find out that he is doing such horrible things? Charles sighs lightly. Of course, he'll have to be destroyed, but it's not that easy. You have to understand something. Garrett, he helped me to learn. Not in the ways of the wolf, but he was a friend. You understand? He gave me advice, just like I'm seeking from you right now. He was a good man. At least I thought he was. You have to understand one thing. The only thing that changed me from the monster in which I was I saw my own humanity. And then I saw what I could have become. The one that was Malachi is a true demon. None have ever been able to truly withstand him, but I was able to. Of course, before his father did what had to be done. Yet at that moment, I made a promise to myself, as well as those in which I interact with. And what's that? That I would try, despite the fact that I am this creature, the one in which you call a Pricolici. I swore that I would be a better man, the man that I was when I was a human, before I became what you see before you. And in this, I tried my best to instill the laws on which your council has embraced. Sometimes, especially when it comes to trafficking of things in which are best left alone, you must understand, cryptids, despite the fact so many of them we have had to deal with, especially the xenocephali, he means the dogmen, of course. Not all of them are as our enemies. You may soon discover this. You dealt with more dogmen than I would probably want to know about. Indeed, my friend, indeed. But moving on from that, the fact is, if he is smuggling and imprisoning living creatures, he must be destroyed. But how do you plan on finding out this information? This man, get it? If he is making deals with the vampires who were made by Malachi, as well as possibly corrupting one of your members, how can he prove this? This man surely is not a fool. At least, not when it comes to being found. Charles nods agreement. That's the truth. However, there are certain things I can exploit. I don't like having to do it, but, well, if Alphonse taught me anything, it was how to do that, he says somewhat bitterly. I heard that he passed recently. Yeah, about a month ago. I'm sorry. He was a wily old bastard, but he was a good man regardless. He will be greatly missed. Indeed. So, how do you plan on getting this get it to open up to you? You say you will have to exploit. Tell me, please. Come, share. I will tell you. Roughly, I would say close to 40 or so years ago, give or take, maybe a few years, I came across a boy. He had been infected at a very young age. A damn rogue had infected him, and of course, well, the boy was lucky enough to have killed him. Unfortunately, the damage was done when he was 13, of course. On the full moon, he was in an orphanage, and he killed all of his friends as well as the caretaker of the home. But I was able to take him under my wing. I had to, unfortunately, kill one of my own, but they wanted to be a narrow-minded bastard, so I didn't have a choice. His name's Alex. He's a good guy. Good kid. He's actually possibly one of the strongest, and maybe the strongest, in which I've come across, next to you, of course. That in itself is a rarity. Very few have ever survived being bitten at such a young age. How young was he, do you think? Well, from what he's told me, I believe he was 7, 8, maybe even younger than that. He don't really talk about it. He's never really shared that much detail with me, but he's been trustworthy from the beginning. I plan on exploiting Garrett's one flaw. And what would that be? The old man's bitter, and he's lonely. You understand? He seeks companionship. I'm thinking about having Alex, is his name. He's been an enforcer, as well as a hunter of dogmen for the council for quite a few years now. He's semi-retired, but I'm thinking maybe, just maybe, this could get him out of his head and actually maybe doing the council a favor one last time. I would advise you to be careful with this. If your protege is as strong as you say, then I have no doubt he can handle himself in the situation. How is his intent? I mean his heart? He's about as good as they come, at least when it comes to one of us. That is a good thing, so he can be trusted. I'm impressed. However, this Garrett, from what you have described, especially if he is an alpha in ability and former alpha in rank, and he is as old as you say, he will be very crafty, very manipulative in his own way. You must make sure that your protege does not fall for this. I know. It's going to take time, but I appreciate the feedback you've given me. It's kind of given me a little bit more of a focus of what needs to be done. Indeed, if he is doing this to innocent beings, this Garrett must be destroyed. And the same with this Romanchek. If this is true, they both must die. There is no other statement which I can make. They must be dealt with. This is business that must be taken care of. I need to know one thing, however. Young Sanchez. I'm hardly young anymore, old man. True enough, responds the centuries-old hybrid, in which appears to be a man no older than his mid-30s. Yes, I promise you, I can take care of this. I know for a fact, Alex will be able to as well. I'm glad to hear this. Now, is there anything else that you need? Well, I need to rest, and by tomorrow I should be able to leave freely. Very well. It is good to see you, old friend. The two talk over small talk, and for the most part, anything in depth is over with. However, this conversation has filled BlackFeather with a very strong determination, as well as a respect that even the oldest of monsters can find their humanity once more. It fills an old man with hope, as well as a stronger intent. Thus ends this chapter. I hope you enjoyed this side story of the Pricolici. This, of course, as you may have figured out by now, is linked to another universe in which I've created. That, of course, of Unforgiven. If you get a chance, listen to those stories as well. There's several chapters, and the final one is not quite done yet. I know it's not as popular as Werewolf Hunter. Like I said, give it a chance. And it will hopefully help you to understand the lore behind my mythos a little bit better. Also, in case you haven't noticed, this is setting up for Alex's next encounter when it comes to the affairs before him in Chapter 3. And truly, it's going to take time, but I'm getting there. I hope you guys enjoyed this story of a man who found redemption, for ironically becoming something truly unique, as well as both more and less than what he ever had been before. You guys be blessed, and you be safe.